And there you are.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, all right, I guess. Let me put this on mute.
My back has been killing me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yesterday when I woke up, it was terrible. After a while, I worked it out, and today, I I don't know.
No, both yesterday and I don't know because I was walking around the house a lot. I was doing laundry, going up and down the stairs. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but
But
when Dara came home, well, she came home from the gym, not from work because she worked from home.
uh-huh,
Um, she she made dinner. I just sat like a lump.
really, it was that
Yep.
bad. Oh God, I
Maybe
don't
I can
know.
con her into making dinner again.
Huh? Oh,
Or
if you,
maybe bringing in from Mizrahi. That would be good.
yeah, yeah. Would she drive there and pick it up, or I guess, or
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah, she
or the
would.
the two of you could go there, I guess. But
Yes, we can do that too. Except
yeah.
that we have class tonight, so I don't
Oh,
know
that's
how I'm going
right.
to work that.
That's right. That's
I
right.
don't know if I'm going to Zoom or actually go.
Well, depending on how you feel. Yeah, but with Dara there, maybe you'll just stay home.
Exactly. I'll Zoom it.
Probably want to talk to the rabbi.
Wait, hi, Dave.
Hi, I'm
Uh,
going to want to talk to the rabbi.
okay. You want to
Okay.
sit here then?
Yes.
Okay.
You can get me some apple juice. I wouldn't mind.
All right. I'm going to get David some apple juice.
How many people?
Okay. Okay.
How many people?
Liz, Estelle, and you. Okay.
And not the rabbi yet.
Not the rabbi yet, but I'm putting it on mute. Okay.
Morning, Estelle.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm hanging in.
Like all of us, yeah.
Exactly.
Uh,
Estelle, good morning. This is David, and I'm
Hi, David.
officially saying hi to you, even though I've heard your voice a million times. Not a million, but
Yeah, well, yeah, I enjoy listening to you as well, and Lois.
to whom?
Always,
Lois, your wife.
enjoy listening to you and Lois. Always interesting discussions with both of you.
Well, at least with one of us. You can vote as to which that, but I might bore you for a few minutes because there's a couple of questions I want to ask Rabbi Carter
interesting.
at the beginning. So I hope that
Hi.
There you go. Go
I'll
for
try
it,
to.
Hello,
David.
Rabbi. Morning,
Hi,
Rabbi.
Estelle.
Hi.
Hi, Lois. Hi, Liz. Hi, David.
Hi, Rabbi Karsh. How are you?
Good. So what do you got?
Me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you.
These notions have, that we talked about yesterday have been floating through my head.
Yeah.
And we have a general problem. And we were talking about what the powers of the Sanhedrin are based in and exactly how far they're allowed to go.
Right.
I forgot what the thing we were talking about, Prose Bowl and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's occurring to me that we have a general principle that a positive mitzvah is more precious than a negative mitzvah. And there's, all sorts of sources for it.
Yeah.
And now one particularly strong, and it also occurred to me that what makes us who we are, either as individuals or as a community, are the things that we do in common, not the things that we don't do. It's not the fact that we, neither of us, are going to drink blood or something.
Right.
That doesn't provide a bond.
Right. Correct.
We put on going. So there is something about, and so even in the case of Yibum, levirate marriage,
Yeah.
if a man dies and he hasn't given birth to a male child
No, any child.
and any child? Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. So only if it's the first. Okay, but in that case, he's permitted to marry his.
It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah.
Yes. Well, no, because it's a mitzvah, but
It's a
there's
positive commandment.
Yeah, but he can do chalitza. So
No, but chalitza is not preferred from the Torah. It became preferred in the rabbis, but chalitza is only if you don't want to do the mitzvah. The mitzvah is yibum. The Torah wants you to do yibum. It does not want you to do chalitza unless you can't do yibum for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, in Vayikra, somewhere around 20, verse 20, it's forbidden to marry your sister-in-law.
Right.
And so this is given a classic example of why a positive mitzvah is more, because we have a thing in order to preserve the name and perhaps the fortune of the widow. So why in Yibam there we protect the positive mitzvah, but just using Rosh Hashanah as example, how do we decide that we're gonna not perform the positive mitzvah? And there's not even a Torah prohibition facing us on the other side, only a rabbinic gezerah. And in general, how far can I asked you this briefly before? How far can Sanhedrin go? Don't they have certain limits? I mean, like one of the limits that they're going to have to, they can't infringe on Baal Tosef. And so, but okay. But in general, why do we, in some cases, permit and some cases forbid? I mean, how come it isn't?
They have a mandate also to
They can say
protect the I would call protect mitzvos, but also protect Torah. They have a mandate. So there could be sometimes when something looks fairly innocuous, but it presents a real challenge. So for instance, let's say it comes to Shabbos. So they have a mandate which they interpret to mean that it's part of their responsibility is to put fences around, let's say Shabbos, in order to protect Shabbos, the atmosphere of Shabbos, or the quality of Shabbos as it's practiced in the community. Or let's say they have a mandate to make sure that the poor are taken care of. Or let's say sometimes they have a mandate to protect the nature of something. Sometimes they have a mandate to make sure something specific happens. And it's up to their judgment to determine when to apply their responsibility to protect the Torah, and when it's their responsibility to take care of social responsibilities or things. So it's going to be up to their judgment. So like I agree with you. I don't know what this carrying problem was that they had, why it was such an enormous problem that it meant that we can't blow shofar on Shabbos, because it seems like it's such an unlikely infraction. The fact that people will carry their shofar from a private domain to a public domain, or more
But
than
but, the,
4
but the-
amos in a
there's
public domain. But
but the reason
it's their mandate is to protect Shabbos, let's say. So there might be times where, in order to protect Shabbos, they're going to have to, you know, stop
they also
something
have a
else from being done,
responsibility to keep the roads open during the festival time.
which
They right.
that's a mandate. Yeah, that's a
Yes,
mandate, for instance. Yeah. And so there will be leniencies when it comes to carrying when it's talking about the roads during when people are going up for the pilgrimage festivals. So sometimes their mandate requires them to be lenient. Sometimes their mandate requires them to be severe, depending on what their primary concern is.
but
But they have to, they have a lot of different considerations, and they have to somehow balance them. And that's their responsibility to make those judgments, like you said,
okay,
within some kind of framework. But yeah.
but but we have the framework that uh, oh, oh yes oh had to do with some. I'm sorry, Lily. Had to do with something negative mitzvahs and positive mitzvahs. Oh yes, with positive mitzvahs we get to say "Shei v'lo taseh." Why? And why don't we get to violate a negative commandment? What's there inherent about them? And where does that legislation come from? Is that a rabbinic legislation, or is that something that's imposed by the Torah itself?
Okay. So, all right. All right. So also, just we agree that whenever they make like a general statement, like for instance, let's say they say a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment. Let's say something like that. Aseh docha lo saseh. So they'll make a general statement, but that these general statements always get qualified. So there are going to be lots of exceptions, for instance, to that one, where positive commandment overrides a negative commandment. It'll end up being a positive commandment can override a negative commandment, but not if the negative commandment has a serious penalty associated with it, or not a positive commandment can override a negative commandment, but not if the negative commandment also has a positive commandment associated with it. And then, so there's all sorts of qualifications that will happen in these things. So even when they say that they can override, um, they cannot. They call it shave va'altasa, sit and not do, or kum vase, or get up and do. So the general rule is that they are allowed to legislate that you not do a mitzvah if if there's other overriding concerns. They're not allowed to legislate that you transgress a negative commandment. However, for instance, even with where they're allowed to tell you not to do a mitzvah, they can't uproot a mitzvah. So, for instance, they can't tell you that you can never blow shofar. They can't create a circumstance where you could never blow shofar. They can create a circumstance where sometimes you can't blow shofar, but they can't remove a mitzvah from the Torah. Let's say that's another. So you
Okay,
have qualifications. You have a statement, and then there's going to be all sorts of qualifications that go together with that statement. So let's just take that one. It, the All right, the rule, we'll call it a rule, that the Sanhedrin can legislate that we not fulfill a positive commandment, but
and then of course the question arises: where does
they,
the authority?
right,
Where does the authority for that come from?
right, that's what we're looking for. The rule that the Sanhedrin can legislate that we not fulfill a positive commandment, but they cannot legislate that we transgress a negative commandment.
You're going to get out of an AI machine.
I'm just going to get sources from this. The rule that a Sanhedrin can legislate that we not fulfill a positive commandment, but they cannot legislate that we transgress a negative commandment. Is that a biblical rule? Or a rabbinic rule? All right, so let's just see what they quote here.
Are they printing text or giving you sources?
They printed text, but I'm more interested in the sources than the text. Like, for instance, they're saying the rule that the Sanhedrin can legislate that we not fulfill a positive commandment by commanding an action, but cannot legislate that we transgress a negative commandment by commanding a prohibited act, is a rabbinic rule and not a biblical one. This distinction is discussed in rabbinic literature and is not an explicit biblical law. So that might be what it means by rabbinic rule. That's the thing I have to see. The Torah does empower the Sanhedrin or the central rabbinic authority to issue binding rulings, as indicated in Deuteronomy 17:10-11, but it does not give explicit permission to override negative commandments. The rabbis, in turn, established that while they may suspend the fulfillment of positive commandments under certain circumstances, example, to protect public welfare or prevent greater harm, they do not have the authority to permit the violation of negative commandment outright. This is a matter of rabbinic jurisprudence to ensure the integrity of the Torah's prohibitions. Maimonides codifies this distinction. Rabbinic authority can suspend positive commandments, but may not create a situation that inevitably requires violation of negative Torah precept. The basics for rabbinic legislation is outlined in the principle of making a fence around the Torah, but negative commands have a higher level of stringency rooted in a biblical text and rabbinic interpretation. The problem is that the sources here, they're not the kind of sources. I'm sure like this is a subject that the Gush does the
Who's the gush?
they are it's called Har Etzion. It's virtual Beit Midrash, and they just have a
Yeah.
lot of these learned articles on the
Yes.
website.
Yes.
We, yeah, I like to use them a lot.
Yes, we frequently praise them.
Yeah, discuss this.
If you'd like to, withdraw for a while, we can think about it and then come back.
All right, let me just see something etzion.org.il. It's not this. All right, I'm just going to look a couple more. I'm just going to look at the sources here. Bum, 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 bum.
Is the implication of what you just said that they are granted the permission at the biblical level in order to forbid
Yes. Well, because the
biblical, but
actual authority is they are supposed to make fences. That notion is a biblical authority for them to make law to protect other, either law or.
but according to the Torah, they could have permitted violations of Torah law, but by rabbinic decision, they decided not to.
I don't know if that's the case, right?
Okay,
That's what we're looking at. That's
yeah,
what.
but
But when they say rabbinic, they may just mean it's only discussed in the Gemara. They may not be that it's rabbinic in the sense we're talking about it.
You said that. I got it.
Okay. Obviously this is the kind of subject that does get discussed. We just have to find out where it is. Okay. So far, so that's the question is that authority or lack of authority, what is the source of that distinction? Is it biblical or is it rabbinic? This notion that they can ask us to withhold from doing a positive commandment, but they cannot ask us to transgress a negative commandment in their bid to protect some aspect of Torah. That is a limitation on their ability to protect it. So that came up because of yesterday's discussion about Prusbul, because it is often cited as an example where the rabbis actually permit the transgression of a negative commandment, an active transgression, when supposedly they're not allowed to do that. So amongst the answers to that in the Prusbul thing, or amongst the responses to that, is the Rambam, who holds that the whole thing was rabbinic to begin with. It wasn't biblical. But the Rambam would therefore say that if it was biblical, they wouldn't have been able to do this. The whole reason Prusbul works is because it was a rabbinic problem to begin with, because Shemitah was only rabbinic during that time, continues to only be rabbinic in our time. But should Shemitah become biblical, then Prusbul would not work. That's the Rambam's opinion. And then we had Tosfos's opinion, which is that the reason Prusbul works is it's just encouraging a biblical option. This biblical option was always there. It's just people weren't exercising it. The biblical option of handing your debt over, the loans over to the court and have the court collect it, that was a biblical remedy that was there the entire time. It's just that people felt like it was not in the spirit of the law, that the spirit of the law was to allow for an amnesty of the loans, because debt is a kind of slavery almost for people. And so this is a kind of remedy so that people don't become enslaved to their debt. So because they felt that way, they weren't exercising this biblical option. And Hillel was telling them, you got to exercise it, because even though you might be right in other circumstances that this is not the spirit of the law, we've got another problem that is worse than you not fulfilling the spirit of the law, which is that there are poor people that are starving. So when we measure the poor people starving and you doing something that might be technically illegal, but you don't feel it's in the spirit of the law, we're encouraging you to do that thing. So that's Tosfos. But then there is Rashi's thing, which we had yesterday, and Rashi's was that technically what he's allowing you to do is, the way he's allowing you to do it is not available biblically. This is a clever fix, a clever rabbinic fix, and it wouldn't have occurred to you, or wouldn't have even been available, had the rabbis not created this kind of fix, this kind of end around. But in each one of these answers, they would be saying that this is not an example of the Sanhedrin telling you to actively violate a law in the Torah in order to protect some other issue, because they're not doing that. They're not asking you to actively violate the Torah for any of those three reasons. There are times when a king or a prophet or even the Sanhedrin can employ what they call emergency power, hora'at sha'ah, and there they actually can ask you on a temporary basis to actively violate the Torah. So, but that's called hora'at sha'ah, and that's like an emergency situation. And even that, like, what is the source for that? Is that where does that come from? Is that biblical or rabbinic that they're allowed to do that? Again, they might say, when we ask if it's biblical or rabbinic, we mean according to the halachic standards, not whether it's overtly mentioned in the Torah or not, but just, is it learned from oral law? Is it learned from one of the 13 methodologies for extracting halacha from a verse, or some other method, drasha method, or is it something that begins as rabbinic law in itself? Like, for instance, we have a rule. We studied this together, but we have a rule that if you have a doubt about a biblical law, you're supposed to take the stringent position. If you have a doubt about rabbinic law, you're supposed to take the lenient position. And then, but we saw that, at least according to the Rambam, that law itself is rabbinic. So it was the rabbis who said that in a case of biblical law, you act stringently, and in the case of rabbinic law, you act leniently. It was the rabbis themselves who generated that rule. So are they generating these rules, or are these rules biblical? And if they were generating these rules, how could they, if the rule that they're generating would ask you to do something that seems to be beyond their power, something like that? This is for sure discussed. I mean, this is somebody like the Maritz Chayes or somebody like that. There are commentaries where this is one of their focuses, which is like methodology, and the rules for that underlie some of these principles. So we just have to find the place that actually talks about these specific ones that we're talking about. Okay.
I guess I doubt that we'd have convergent opinions. I would think that there would be, many ways of
It could be.
looking at it.
It could be.
Or else you would have heard of it. Okay.
No, but I know, I mean, there's certain of these commentaries where I just would have never, this is like their area of specialty. It's not necessarily commonly studied for some reason. Even that thing about, even that question about, like suffix d'oraisa lechumra, suffix d'rabbanan lekula, that if you have a doubt about a biblical thing, we are severe, and the doubt about a rabbinical thing, we're lenient. The discussion about whether that itself is rabbinic or biblical, it's a known that there is a discussion about that, but exactly
Isn't the
the
Rambam
details of it,
isn't the Rambam does Yaqid?
I don't remember. I know there's disagreement about it, but I
Oh, there is.
don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember if he's often quoted in that context. But this is for sure discussed, and we just have to find out where. The problem that perplexity has is if let's say on virtual Beit Midrash, there was a thorough treatment of this, or on some other site, there was a thorough treatment, and it has access to those sites. It has access to almost all those sites. So then it will incorporate what it says in those treatments into their answer. But if this particular subject is not widely discussed on material available on the internet, then it doesn't have access to the discussion. Now, but lots of this stuff are making their way onto the internet, but there's still some lag. So you could have certain subjects where you get very detailed. Like I was doing research on lifnei iver, the biblical transgression of putting a stumbling block before the blind. There's rabbinic lifnei iver, and I was asking for distinctions, and it was giving me very fine distinctions, and it was well researched and with all sorts of good sources. So, and that was because that discussion was well treated on some of these sites. It also, and it's not limited to English. It even if it's in Hebrew, it knows it, like it knows everything. But or so if it wouldn't matter what language it's in, but it still has to be available online. More and more is available online, but not everything. So that's part one of the limitations there. Okay, now.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, but what is like uh I like oftentimes I'll ask it these kinds of questions, and I would say more often than not, I get good answers with good sources, but still, it's not uncommon that I don't. Like that last one was very vague, and even when it said rabbinic, it seemed to me that it might just mean that it appears in rabbinic literature, not that it's actually
Yes.
a rabbinic source. Okay, let's see here. Also, I've done this where I'll take something like a very opaque piece of Torah, like it could be from Aish Kodesh, from Rabbi Shapiro, Rabbi Klonim Kalman Shapiro, the Piasetzner Rebbe. So we're doing a class. The other members of the class have a translation of it. I have the Sefaria, which is the original, the original Hebrew. So there's some of them where they're pretty long, and there's a lot being presented, and it's being presented in a way where you really have to read it carefully in order to get what he's saying. You could, his specific points. And so it could take like, I don't know, like 20 minutes to read it, even just to read it. And then, so what'll happen is I'll read through it, and then I'll copy it, put it into Perplexity, and ask it to summarize the points in English. And it gives me a summary. And every time I've done that, it has done an excellent job. Like, because it has all the material there, and now it's just being asked to work it out. So then it does like an excellent job. But there's some times where you could ask it the most simple thing, and it makes a mistake. Like I've asked it, even things that have to do with math. Like I've asked it, like there was somebody who just completed Shas as part of our Daf Yomi group. They came in at a certain time, sometime I think during Sanhedrin, and so, or maybe they started Sanhedrin with us. So I asked it, if this man started finished Shas with the beginning of Sanhedrin, when did he start learning Daf Yomi? So it gave me a date 6 years ago. And then I wrote, that can't be because that's only 6 years ago. And then it said, you're right. And then it gave me another date, and it was still wrong. So I don't know why. There's also some computing things that end up in a funny place with it. And that's simple math. I mean, it's not simple. It's simple for a computer. It's not necessarily. We could figure it out on the back of an envelope, that kind of thing, but it got it wrong. So I don't know entirely.
It sounds like that's something one of those savants could tell you.
In a second. Yeah, in a second. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
but
you'd think that a computer should be able to do that with no effort. Somehow it's in some weird place that it makes that mistake. I don't know. I've had other ones like that where it made what ends up being a very simple mistake. But
there's some people who hold that, we generally think of quantum events as being, at the very, very small. But there are a lot of physicists that hold that, like when something happens with your computer, it's a truly quantum indeterminate event, and they're just going to happen.
no matter what, they're always going to happen.
There's always a chance of it, and very
Yeah.
rarely it'll happen,
Right.
but it will happen.
Right. That's why if you're relying on this stuff, you have to have secondary, you have some kind of secondary support for it. So I mean, usually what I do is it'll show you its work. The truth is, I could do another thing. There's when you ask it a question, it gives you like an immediate answer. There is another option that you can click on, which is deep research. In the deep research, it does a more exhaustive search. I don't know, and it sort of shows you its process. I don't know, honestly, what the difference between the two are, but and maybe it would come up if I asked it to do a deep research. But I've had, I don't know. Anyways, it's but this issue we're having right now with it, like in a few months, I'm sure they'll have already fixed it. I mean, not your problem, the quantum error thing, but just these kind of problems. Okay. Yeah.
Will we see you tomorrow?
What is tomorrow? Tomorrow is Wednesday. Yes.
Tonight,
Yes.
tonight you also have.
Yes, have that class, but we're meeting tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
All right. Yeah.
if you have just a second, this is
Yeah.
just kind of a straightforward but maybe delicate question. The podcasts keep coming up, and there's this one woman who was an ex-Satmar, and she talks about how Satmars live and their traditions. She's respectful about it, but okay. So she was talking about the instructions that couples get before they get married. And I just wondered about something. It seems that about 40% of women do not have a hymen, or it was broken before or whatever. If there is no blood on that night, does that mean that you don't have to wait those days afterward?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
Oh.
You always wait. You always wait. Unless it's a second marriage, but if
Oh.
it's not a second marriage, you would just assume that we didn't see it, but you assume there was blood and that you for some reason didn't see it, and
Oh,
therefore
thank you. Thank
you
you.
wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
okay.
Okay.
Because I listen to her, for some reason, other podcasts come up about people who have left the Mormon church. Boy, is that interesting. But okay. All
I'm
right.
sure I've
yeah.
met people. I met a gentleman who left the Amish, of his particular Amish group. There are a lot of similarities, between them.
Yeah, there are. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right, bye. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
See you
You're
tomorrow.
welcome. See you tomorrow.
Oh, see you tonight.
Yes.
Yes?
See you. Yes. Correct.
Thank you,
Correct.
Nakash.
You're welcome.